I'm like 20 plus deals in. I don't think I've actually ever used a hard money loan.
What is going on, guys? Welcome to today's episode of the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast. We are here today with Mason Bridges for this episode of the Scale Show. If this is your first time to one of these Monday episodes, we interview people that are like really in the weeds of their business and are working to grow. And so a lot of these people are Scale community members. A lot of them are people that maybe have only been in real estate for a couple of years. And Mason here is one of our shining stars in the Scale community because he has been grinding for just over a year and started to put up some really awesome numbers on some of the different deals he's doing. And yeah, dude, I'm super excited to have you on the show today. So I really appreciate you taking the time to, take a break from all the seller calls that I know you're getting on a very regular basis and come and waste 45 minutes with me. But man, to kick us off, give us a quick 3-minute rundown, who you are, where you're based, and what your team/business currently looks like.
Yeah, and thanks for the invite. I figured it had been in the mail. Maybe it had gotten lost, but
yeah. Well, I mean,
happy to finally be here.
You know how the postal service goes, right? It's just like 14% margin of error, so they tell us. That's why when the mail doesn't generate leads, it's the post service fault.
I know, and there's a deal in that 14% error, but
every time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I mean, just quick intro. Anytime I ever introduce myself, I always introduce myself as a good time. Because that is what I am. And past that, I'm a family man. I'm born and raised in Thomaston, Georgia, which is actually currently where I operate my business out of. It's kind of in the heart of in Georgia, kind of between Columbus, Macon, Atlanta, 3 biggest hubs here. And come from a pretty big family. My dad's a real estate attorney. My mom works at the school as a parapro, and have bounced around a little bit over the last decade. After college, I lived in Atlanta for a little while, and really kind of got my first gig in the real estate space. Took a job in acquisitions early on at Open Door. And that really opened my eyes to a lot of things, and ended up moving out to Phoenix, running an acquisitions team. And I will tell you, in that time, I found out how fickle your importance at a larger organization can be. I had rose-colored glasses on, was dedicated to that company, and then things happen and businesses have to make decisions. So left that company on pretty good terms, but was out in Phoenix with my wife and started working in the SFR space. So selling deals over to funds, working with retail investors, selling off portfolio deals, and really heavily involved in the networking scene there. Huge SFR like networking scene in Phoenix. And that's really where I started to get kind of put onto a lot of this, right? And, ended up walking in one day. My wife told me she was pregnant, and we decided to move back to Thomaston to be about a mile from both the grandparents. And nice. That is where we are now. And springboarded, kind of launched my business here and just living the dream.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have one of the most intriguing markets to me. And we regularly are discussing on our Scale community calls some of the situations to deal with, man. It just feels like it's like the Netflix show, The Ozarks, with some of just like the drama and like the, unforeseen things that seem to arise so regularly with the random deals. It's definitely an interesting market. How big is your target area?
Yeah, so I'm in 3 counties right now. But my main target area is county population somewhere around like 25 to 27,000.
Really small thing.
But yeah, well, neighboring counties that I'm also in, it's even less than that, like half of that. So yeah, definitely really small. A lot of weird stuff happens with these markets, and then you see these folks in church, and you have to act like you like them. So
yeah, that's crazy small, because we had Kyle and Emma on the show a few weeks ago, and like their market's small up in rural Idaho. But I think the thing that's different with where they're at is a lot of those people are kind of like loners, whereas yours is small, but it's also very community driven. So you always seem to have this extra, I don't say like potential for drama. Like you said, you're seeing people at church or at the grocery store, or someone's dad knows somebody else's dad, and it becomes a whole thing. And
100%.
it's led to a lot of interesting conversations, because I don't know if I've ever, met or worked with other operators that have it quite like that. So yeah, that's cool though. I mean, you're still making it work regardless. So what's your current asset class and exit strategy that you're pursuing down there?
Yeah, so primary asset class is single family, and we sprinkle in some raw land. Land's a big play down here. So, and then we're not too far outside of Atlanta. So a lot of development happening. Exit strategy, wholesale and flipping, primarily. Trying to dial in the flipping operations, and then really, really picky on rentals. We'll take them down from time to time when we can pull money out or we can get good terms, but mainly wholesale and flipping.
Do you have ambition to get more into rentals as like interest rates and stuff come down, or are you just trying to do the transactional thing?
No, we talk about it in the group all the time, making massive income. I think when I get my business to a place where I have predictable recurring revenue and I have a little bit more play money, yeah, absolutely. But I've found that they are a huge money suck.
They are, and
depending on where you're at in your phase.
Totally. And also too, here's the thing, like if like cash flow is the real reason, Dan and I were just talking about this yesterday, like the hard money lending is so like when you have like a little bit of change, right, is where it's at, dude. Like we can make 18-20% on that if we turn it twice a year.
Yeah.
It's if literally if you want like wealth generation and leverage and debt, like rental properties, you can't beat that for sure. But if you just want cash flow, debt is 100% the play. Awesome. And so within your business, do you have any staff yet? I actually don't even know if I know this. Or are you kind of like doing everything?
Man, name the hat and I'm wearing it.
Yeah, right. Doing all of it. I thought you had like someone that was doing TC or a little bit for one period of time or another.
No, I wish, because I would say the only person I have on my team is like an unofficial partner. It's my father. He's my attorney. I think I've done 20 plus transactions. He's closed every single one of them. So he's a pain in the ass to deal with sometimes. So I would love to have transaction coordination. If anybody listening, call me. But no, past that, I have a guy we might be bringing on to do some cold calling so that we can try and monetize the return senders. I mean, I'll put my dirty laundry out there. We were going to start it, and RE Simply won't let you do a monthly cadence on your dialer cost. So I didn't want to spend $1,000 and then this guy suck. So just me, man. Just me right now.
Yeah. They don't let you do monthly on RE Simply for the dialer anymore?
Not if you have a yearly subscription, which I just switched to.
Yeah. Well, that's what you get for trying to save $65, right? Like, honestly.
I mean, hey.
Yeah.
Got to be frugal in certain areas.
Totally. Yeah. So you said you're working your return senders. Is direct mail your main deal source so far?
Yeah. We've actually kind of honed it in a little bit, right? So I'm in 3 different markets now. So I do like a broader direct mail on a monthly basis, which is just like what I call the core 4 list. Absentee liens, bankruptcies, and vacants. That goes out every month. Really nothing sexy to that at all. But I do a little bit more targeted direct mail. Here in Georgia, foreclosures drop on the first Tuesday of every month. So you can't really like target those on a weekly basis without pretty heavy lift. You can do it, but I bought pre-probate, probate, divorce leads, and inherited leads, which I'm actually a test case for this company on these inherited leads. And that's all automated,
Yeah.
I got a great company that pulls that data weekly. And then I send it over to a company out of Tampa that does the handwriting. And I've got that on like a 4-month cadence.
Nice. So you say you bought that like from, is it like a list provider that goes and like has it? Like, is it like a list source, or is it like a specialty one that's just for your area?
Yeah, no. So it's a company. They mainly focus on foreclosures. They're based out of Florida, but you can essentially buy like an annual premium. I think I paid like $1,800. And that gets me access to the data, and they pull it weekly, send it over to the handwritten mail folks.
Okay.
So that's been awesome. I've got to the point where I do get some referrals, and then I have like a heavy realtor network. So get some stuff through that as well.
Nice. How many deals a month are you doing about right now?
I calculated it. Right now it's about two a month, but
Mhm.
it's come in bunches. There was a couple of really weird lull periods this year.
Sure. And is that two since you started? So like basically you calculate it out from your first period because it took you a little bit to get your first one, or is that basically from when you got your first deal to now?
No, that's from January this year
Nice.
through
Okay.
now.
Perfect.
There's like 4 deals I did in Q4 of last year that I didn't count.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Sweet. I mean, that's a pretty good clip though. Like honestly, for a year to get up to two deals a month as like a one person operator in a very tricky market. I mean, you should definitely be giving yourself some kudos on that. Um, and so as that solo operator role, what does like your sales pipeline look like? Like the intake process and all that. You're like, you have a lot of different hats that you have to juggle.
Sure. Well, I will say the sales pipeline piece is like the most natural part of this business for me.
Sure.
Other than my first job out of college, which I recruited for a landscape company,
Mm-hmm.
I have always had a pipeline or a book of business. I joke and tell folks like, I make money by talking on the phone, and I have for a decade now. So that piece is a lot more manageable for me. So you get the systems in place, right? And we use most folks in our group use Already Simply, but you set up the campaigns, lead comes in, and it's a pretty straightforward process. I do discovery. I think I might be a little bit different than most folks. I will have like a discovery call and build good rapport and everything. I like to hop off the call and do like a first layer of due diligence
Mm-hmm.
before I call back and kind of set a follow up appointment. If I feel like there's a little bit of weirdness and they might not answer or it needs to act faster, like I will. But I do a layer of due diligence and call, get the appointment, go out on appointments. I am in 3 different counties, so like I spend a ton of time on the road. And then from there, make offers. I've got a process in place to start transaction coordination and then dispo. So pretty straightforward.
Nice. I mean, and it's a little bit different what you do there, but it fits the like seller expectations, right? Like I know we've talked about this before, but it's like a handshake kind of market, right? It's not
Very
like
much
you're in
so.
some of these massive areas where the seller's calling like 6 different people and it literally becomes like a race who's going to be there first a lot of the time. I mean, some of the places that you told us about on the calls, it's the most like obvious motivated seller that you've ever heard, but they're still going to just sell when they're ready. Right.
100%.
And there's
Yep.
nothing you can do about that except like make them like you more.
Yeah.
Right. So when like in that market, you obviously you're from there, your family's from there. What are like the biggest challenges that you face? Like besides, just like seeing people in church and different things, like the Ozark mentality. I want to go back to that because like you have people like stabbing you in the back down there. You have like people that are like family friends that start talking trash. Like you have all kinds of weird stuff. Like how do you overcome that? Or like what are like some of the ways that you found to kind of get past just the drama that seems to be impossible to escape for you?
Yeah, it's a timely question.
Because there's another one. Yeah.
Very timely.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't, it's a challenge. It's a pending challenge. It's still something that I deal with. Right. And,
Yeah.
it's to the point that even in our group call, I was talking about maybe stopping more of the broader marketing here in just my direct market because I went into a larger market that's been pretty fruitful and you just don't have to deal with some of this stuff. And like my capital partners are good friends of mine that work at the bank. That can cause some relationship weirdness. My dad's an attorney and, he doesn't want me pissing people off. So,
Yeah.
it's been probably the most difficult thing to kind of figure out, right, as I build a business. And I don't want to get too philosophical here, but kind of where I'm leaning towards, right, is like, I know who I am, right, and I know the morals and the values and what I'm trying to do, and the fact that I do want to help people out and be extremely honest, and just really trying to like attach to those things when weird stuff starts to happen or you get screwed over by somebody. So that piece from a personal perspective helps, right? Center while you're building a business, but it's hard. Like, from a tactical standpoint, like I have to be really careful with who I talk to about certain deals.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You really there is no like pre-wholesaling stuff. I know we talk about that. I
Yeah.
tried, got deals swept out from under me. So you have to be really careful about those things. Like, funny enough, you have to be really careful about dispo in general. Because I have dispoed properties where the end buyer ended up being related to the person selling, and that made
Nice.
a lot of people mad. So,
Nice.
yeah, it's really interesting. And I think the solve might be to do a little bit more targeted marketing in my area where I can like help people through probate and title issues, and kind of do the more broader marketing and wholesale in some of these larger markets outside of me, like where I'm at.
Yeah. I mean, I don't hate that that's the situation though, right? Because ultimately
No,
this should be a solutions-based business,
right.
and it just forces you to do that. Like wholesale real estate in general always gets kind of a bad rap because they say we're like stealing equity or doing different things. But my view on it is it always revolves around intent, and is the person that you're working with actually ending up in a better place,
Yeah.
right? Based on their situation. Are you actually providing them a solution, or are you being a dirtbag? And you always know, right? Like, honestly, like anyone that says like, oh, I didn't know this was a situation, that person definitely screwed that person over. They're a liar. Right. But like it's a weird business where you get in these funny sort of situations.
Yeah.
So like on that dispo piece, like what is your strategy then if you can't pre-dispo it? You have to be really careful with the dispo. Do you just have like a giant like family tree built out for your whole town where like you kind of see who's connected to who so that you don't accidentally like connect the wrong people?
It's funny actually. I could maybe do this massive ancestry.com thing and like build out a buyer's list that way.
Yeah.
Or know who to avoid. But
Yeah.
no, I will be honest. I have to take chances,
Yeah.
right? That's the biggest thing is like I have to feel pretty confident in my numbers, which I will say, find you an agent or two that does volume and knows the business that you can trust, because
Mm-hmm.
that is really helpful to kind of springboard or bounce ideas off of, or to get into their network. So, but really at the end of the day, I have to take chances. I have to put stuff under contract that I don't know if I'm going to be able to move. And a
Mm-hmm.
pretty good rule of thumb for me is like, I try and run numbers in the event that worst case scenario, I can't wholesale it. I don't necessarily want the deal, that I can take it down because the numbers make sense. Like if I
Yeah.
absolutely have to, and I have done that. And I've been able to turn around and like, make money off of it, or get rid of it. So, but at the end of the day, it's taking chances. And I can't tell you, I mean, the last like 6, 7 wholesale deals I've done, I mean, I ended up like getting them assigned 4 or 5 days before closing, way past due diligence.
Dang.
Yeah, I mean, it's stressful. I think that this is the biggest piece of my business that I could dial in. And when we do the keys con thing next week, I'm going to be asking a ton of questions on dispo, because it's the hardest part of the business to me. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think I do. I do have a couple of folks that have done repeat business with, that helps. Um, but just getting really kind of creative, when
Mm-hmm.
you start to find these folks is key.
Yeah. And then once you have those relationships, just nurturing them, like that is
For
the,
sure.
I would say dispo is one of the hardest parts when you're starting out, but once you kind of have like your little Rolodex of really good people, it becomes so easy, and that's one of the challenges that we have when we like work with you guys on dispo is we were honestly like pretty fortunate that we made those connections really, really early on when Dan and I started. And so we never quite had to go through a lot of the pains that a lot of you guys seem to go through.
Mm,
Because like our main buyer that we sold so many of our deals to over the years, he called us off of our website because off of a mailer that we'd sent one of his rental properties. And then he was like, hey, we're interested to buy anything that you have. And so we just started selling everything to them right away.
nice.
But I understand that's not how it goes for everybody. So you said that you always trying to get things that you want to take down. You have a great relationship with that bank. Like what that local bank that you said your buddies work at, you get like basically hard money style loans from them. I've never heard that from coming from a local bank.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. I'm like 20 plus deals in. I don't think I've actually ever used a hard money loan.
So that's awesome. So like, did they offer that to you, or did you ask for that? Do you mind going into that financing? Because I think it's a great thing for people to try and get if they can.
Well, let me tell you, I mean, literally the two guys are my best friends, but
Okay.
they are, I mean, they're bankers like through and through. So they're not just like giving me money, and they're like pretty skeptical of most of the deals that I bring them. So I'm having to sell those guys. But, really what that looks like is I came in and I got laid off from my company and I got some severance. Yeah, I had a hell of a year in 2023, made some good money actually. So I had some money put back. And then when I moved back to Thomaston, I was fortunate to where my father had pulled like a line of credit on their primary home. And it was about $200,000. And he let me tap into that a couple of times. So within the first like 3 to 4 months, I hit like a $29,000 wholesale fee. Hit some smaller ones and did a pretty lucrative, like quick flip using that line of credit because I did have to double close that first deal. And that got me at least to like a base point to where I could took out like a business credit card and really just work through it. But really with the bank, if it's a property that I'm not going to be holding on to that we're going to be flipping, or I just need like transactional funding or something. They do like 12-month interest only that floats with the prime rate.
That's sick.
Yeah, and if it's a good enough deal, they'll finance the whole thing. Like I'm closing one on Monday, ARV 225. I'm buying it for 97. It needs $3,000 worth of termite work immediately, but they're gonna roll my closing cost and like $3,000 into it.
Nice.
To do that work. So every now and then I'll get some of those. Sometimes I have to come 5-10% out of pocket for those, but on a flip, you're going to recoup that hopefully.
Yeah.
And then the longer term stuff is just like an in-house, like commercial loan almost. It's a 20-year rate, depends on the deal, but usually prime.
Yeah.
And about 5 to 10% down.
Nice. And then are they putting balloons and stuff on that, like typical commercial loans?
Yeah, it's got a 3-year cycle on it. And, so actually I bought some properties this year on guys that did this same exact loan type 3 years ago. And then, it went up and property taxes went up. So
they're getting bit.
But that's it really. I mean, those are the two loan products I use alongside my own capital and a line of credit. And I'm going to do that again this year. And hopefully double top line revenue and then like have tax returns to show people like, hey, I know what I'm doing, and hopefully, maybe get some private investors at that point.
Yeah. I mean, that like hard money style loan they give you though is awesome. Like I said, I've never heard of that coming from a bank before. And so I guess to give context for people who might have not followed that completely, you get 100% financing at right now. They're probably like 8 or 9%.
It's dropped down to about 8. Yeah.
At 8%. Didn't they with no points on that either? They just like basically give you an interest only loan at 8%, or they have like maybe one or two processes.
Yeah. They've got an origination, like 1%, and then like a $200 desk appraisal fee.
Either way, that's nuts, dude. Like you say you want to go and get private lenders. Private lenders are going to want more money than that. I would just nurse the hell out of that.
Yeah. Deal's got to be good though. That's the caveat.
Well, they should always be good regardless. You don't want to be locking up shitty deals with private investors' money. You're just going to lose someone's 401k.
Right.
So yeah, that's awesome though, dude. So that's huge. And that gives you such an advantage in the market, especially when dispo is tricky, because you don't have to be playing the cash flow game quite as challenging. Quite as challenging of a fashion where it's like you're putting in 15% and you're going getting a hard money loan, and now you're having to carry 12% interest, on all these properties. And that's like all of a sudden equal to your marketing costs, right? Like that is what usually sinks people when they're starting out is when they start playing that game, and you've been able to avoid that. So that's awesome. And then one last question for you before we kind of go into the end of show. I know you're also a family man. You had a child somewhat recently, in the last year, right?
Yeah. He's 15 months old. I think that's how they calculate their age.
Yeah, right. How have you balanced all of that with, running a solopreneur business that's, doing quite well? It's keeping you busy.
Not well.
Not well.
I don't manage it well. and the people that do, I envy them. I think this has probably been the biggest struggle for me personally. Dating back to like 2016, 17 with like high demand W-2s, even pre baby. I think over the years I've gotten better with time management, which is a huge piece, obviously, and learning how to like prioritize task appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
But man, it's really, really hard, and it's even harder with the baby. I think a big thing that kind of consumes a lot of my brain waves is getting my family into a favorable financial position. I know co-host Dylan had a child recently, and he made a comment about just how good it felt to like go through that process and not stress about money. It's huge. Like money's not everything, but it makes things a lot easier. So I have over the years dealt with a ton of guilt when I hit like inevitable, burnout periods. And I'm not operating at 100%, right? You don't feel like you're putting your best foot forward for your family. So it's really hard. And then also I'm a huge family man, and I like a good time, and I like my hobbies. So like I make time for those things, but it's really tough to like be in the moment when you're doing those things and not thinking about your next step, or especially if money gets tight. So for anybody listening, right, like if you feel that way, very normal. And it is a difficult thing to manage.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. If you fast forward 18 months, right from now, let's say you have a business that's spitting off 50, 60 grand a month. You have maybe $1 million plus in the bank. You potentially own a couple, really solid rental properties. Do you think that would be worth it?
Oh yeah. I mean, totally. I think it'll be worth it. Right. And I don't know what that number is, or what, how you laid that out. I don't know what it's got to look like to get to a point to where I feel a little bit better, but this is like, again, not to get too woo woo again, it's like, this is something you've got to figure out for yourself, right? Like you've got to figure out how to be ambitious, while also being comfortable, with where you're at, and
Totally.
the trials and tribulations that you have to go through. So I think having actionable goals, right, and having a sense of direction on where you're going and why is really helpful. For a long period of time there, I did not know those things. I just knew that I like didn't like what I was doing. But you don't want to get caught wandering around and operating without a purpose. So, but yeah, I think, next year or two, get to a place where you feel a lot better about the money piece, and then it allows you to work on yourself a little bit more. So that's my
Totally.
TED talk and 5 minutes of therapy, and that'll be $500.
No, I appreciate you sharing that, because I always feel like that's something that isn't talked about honestly enough on a lot of different platforms, because the people that generally dive into that, right, they're usually already very, very successful, and they're like, well, my non-negotiables are I'm present with my kids every single day for X amount of hours, and I go to everything. I'm like, yeah, you can say that because you have like a web presence that prints you off $5 million a year. Like, I fucking hope you're like that. Otherwise you're a dirtbag. Right. But like for those of us that are in that grind phase, there is a level of sacrifice that you have to understand, and something that I don't have kids. So people tell me I don't have the right to talk about this, whatever. I could tell you that if I did have kids and it meant that I was going to have to, be less present for 2 or 3 years, but that means that I get to be more present for like the following decade or longer, I would do that every single time. Right. It's an asymmetrical upside, especially during the baby phase. As a guy, like, I don't know, it's a little bit different, right? You don't want to be missing like when they're 9, 10, 11 years old, and it's very important that you're around them. But even then, like if you're able to do that and then the rest of their livelihood is better, they're able to go to college without having to take on debt. You're able to enjoy like them becoming a young adult. I think that that's worth it for the vast majority of people. And if not, that's okay too. You just kind of need to realize that for yourself and not try to, fit yourself into the same box. But yeah, that's awesome, man. It'll be worth it. It'll pay off. Like, the handful of folks that we have in the group that are like, I would say like a decent amount ahead of you, but are kind of gone through that same sort of timeline, I don't think any of them would change anything. But
Yeah, no, it's great perspective, and there's no There's no magic answer. It's
Yeah.
just you have to be in it, and you got to find ways to fill your cup back up when it inevitably runs dry.
And that's life, right? There's nothing you can
And
do
it's
about it.
life, man. It's hard, but it's
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. And then when I would say like the nirvana piece comes when your business life and the rest of your life all kind of just merges into one, and it no longer feels like you have to do like a give and take on either side. That's where stuff gets really fun,
Yeah, absolutely.
So cool, man. Well, I appreciate you sharing all that. Right on. All right, we are going to dive into our end of show questions here. First one, which is always the group favorite. What is your craziest real estate investing story?
I honestly, at all the stories we have that we talk about, I don't really have anything wild. I mean, a couple of things came to mind. There is,
See, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you. You have some really wild ones. The problem is you're just so jaded because they're
yeah,
all
feels
freaking
normal.
bananas that they just feel normal. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I would encourage everybody to come to Thomaston, Georgia. We need the tourism dollars. Um, I think there was one that was kind of cool, actually. I've got a buddy here in town that bought this old historic like transfer station. It's like one of the older buildings in Thomaston. And they're kind of decking it out. He's got like a blacksmith shop in the back, and they're doing like some video production. Super kind of quirky, creative guy. Um, but I was working on a house, or actually, it was a lot. I bought a lot that had the biggest, like, I mean, I swear to God, it was like a 40-foot high pile of beer cans, like Bud Light cans.
Yeah.
And this guy was just kind of living out there in the squalor. And it was the last piece of his family's land. And we worked out a deal. But I called my buddy Rick that owns the transfer station, said I need a scrapper, and he sent this guy named Lou over. And Lou, cool dude, came and cleared the whole lot for me. It was ridiculous for like $1,000.
Yeah.
And found out that, and I told you I'm a big music junkie. So like, I'm talking to Lou about some country music and find out that he had been in a traveling band with his brother. Call Rick. Rick sets this guy up on a microphone and just absolutely like Fergie Jesus voice. Guy was just heavenly, like Waylon Jennings, reincarnated. And you would have never known it. This guy runs around town scrapping, making $20 here or there. And it's pretty funny. So Rick is like professionally recording this guy and making a little EP out of it. Lou the Scrapper in Thomaston. The Instagram handle will be there at some point.
Local legend. There we go.
Local legend Lou. But other than that, walk a lot of drug houses and you never know what you're going to see. Like, saw a guy cooking beanie weenies in a can, like in a little like open flame fire in the living room. Yeah, dude he was like playing one string guitar. This one house had like plumbing canal systems. It's like they had halved some PVC pipe and was like running water to different parts of the house.
It's like an aqueduct from like ancient Rome, but like white trash.
Exactly. And it's like, you think it's like, okay, this actually required some level of sophistication and intelligence. Like, where could this go if there weren't drugs involved, So.
Yeah, right. That's so funny. They're like doing little duck races around their house, dude.
Weird stuff like that all the time. And it's just normal. I'm like, yeah, cool. I was thinking about buying a house and all right.
Yeah, I mean, every house you go to, you're one closer to being like discovering like deliverance, like in real life, dude. I just imagine everywhere you're going, it's like da da don't.
No, if it starts getting weird and ghosty like that, I'm out. And I'm scared of the dark, and I'm not about that life.
Yeah, that's so funny, but that's awesome. It's good stuff. All right, second question: if you could go back to the very beginning, what's the one thing that you would have done differently?
Man, tough question here. So, I mean, I got in a really, really kind of bad patch when I was out in Phoenix after I left Open Door, where like sense of purpose, didn't really know what was going on. And I mean, I'm reading every single book, listening to every single podcast. I was going to like 5 meetups a week. And I will tell you that there isn't a way to overconsume. And it put me in an even worse headspace, right? And I kind of got burned out before I ever even started anything. So, finding y'all's podcast in this group was really beneficial. But I knew a ton before I even joined. I just didn't do anything because I had just overconsumed. So I would encourage anybody that's thinking about doing anything, right? Like find what really intrigues you and, do your due diligence, but, find maybe one or two people that really kind of encourage you to jump in and just go for it. Like know your risk, but look for red flags, look for green flags, and just go for it because you can definitely like prevent yourself from doing anything by just over consuming.
It's such an underrated statement. I'm so glad that you shared that, Mason, because like there's this really weird culture with entrepreneurs right now where they're like, I need to be reading like 50 books a year. Like I listen to all these podcasts. I listen to like, All In and like all these things all the time. And after a while, it honestly turns into not that different from just like scrolling social media or watching Netflix. Like
Yeah,
it's like that mental masturbation where they're like, well, we're learning. And so we're so much better than everyone that's like playing video games. It's like, are you really though? Because you're still doing the same amount of actual output as the person that's playing video games, except honestly, they're having way more fun and they don't hate themselves nearly as much as you do because they're not comparing themselves to very successful people constantly. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And when you find that one person that's just like crushing it and you ask them if they've read these books and they go like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And you're like, God bless. They just went for it. So one little snippet here is and this is what's gotten me kind of to where I am in life. Good people skills and just high morals will get you just about out of anything. That's been a crucial piece for me to understand over the years.
There we go. Treat people well and hustle, right? It's like
For
the
sure.
go-giver mentality. If you put yourself out there, people will bring it back. Very, very good advice there. All right. Where can people find you, follow you, and reach out to you?
I am on Instagram. I'm trying to get better at that, but like my personal Instagram is just Mason T. Bridges. Lots of baby pictures. So just a heads up. Facebook, The Buyer Next Door. And yes, I own that LLC.
That's a great business name, by the way.
It's fantastic. I'll sell it for $200,000. Or Mason at thebuyernextdoor.com.
Perfect. Awesome, guys. Well, don't be afraid to hit up Mason if you want to hear more stories about what happens down in bumfuck Georgia or wherever it is Mason lives. But no, just kidding. But seriously, you live in the middle of nowhere. It's wild. Awesome, dude. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed getting to chat with you. And thanks so much for all the great knowledge that you dropped for our audience today. Everybody, go give Mason a follow. And if you got any value from this show, make sure that you follow the podcast as well. If you didn't get any value, then I don't know, go read more books. I bet you probably only need like 10 more to get your 50 for the year. And you're still wondering why you're sitting in the same fucking place that you were. So I don't know. That's on you. If you want to actually take action, subscribe to the show, share it with your friends, and encourage them to actually do something with all the information they pick up off these things. So thanks for listening, everybody. And we'll talk to you guys next week.